This is going to be a little bit of a playful talk, but also you will get some new, well, you'll get useful information, and I hope some of it will be new for you. I'm Elli. Hello. I was a wilderness ranger during COVID, and I saw a lot of discarded used toilet paper. I started calling it duped, so that will be what I will say. And then I decided to get my master's, and I realized this was the topic that I wanted to study because I had not seen any research. I couldn't find any research on it. So this is my master's research from 2022. I was at Northern Arizona University. I had a very accommodating and helpful advisor. And I will let you introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alark Saxena. I'm an assistant professor here at Northern Arizona University. And even though I tried many different ways to suggest different topics of research to Elli, she rather forced me to work with her on this particular topic, which now is our fun dupe topic. So really happy to be here. And and I'm an professor of human dimensions of forestry. So that's how we got connected. And this has been a fun kind of research project that we get to share. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Alark. And Jake, tell us about you.
Yeah, thanks, Elli. My name is Jake Thomas. I'm based in Gunnison, Colorado, and I'm one of the co-founders of a company called PACT Outdoors. And we make all-in-one bathroom kits, and we're using some new technology to make that process more sustainable. But we're also trying to design these kits and tools in a way that makes compliance with L&T practice easier and more straightforward for users of all ability levels. So I kind of represent the private sector, I guess, if you will, in this talk today. But glad to be here.
Great. Thank you, Jake and Alark. Well, as y'all know, there's three main types of problems, impacts with poop and paper. Biological's been really studied with poop, not so much with toilet paper, the actual impacts of it, the decay rate has. The social for toilet paper has very limited research on it. And we are going to talk mostly about that. That'll be the heart of our talk. And then the economical part I'll touch on, but Jake will be able to say more on that as we go along. So here's a brief rundown on what Alark and I did. We had 4 Western wildernesses. They were all in the U.S. Forest Agency section so that we could compare the policies more directly. We did in-person surveys at the trailhead right when people exited. So I was able to ask them about that very trip that they just took. We got 110 respondents, which might not sound like a lot, but we had 57 questions on our survey, and people answered them all. So that is another indication of how important this topic is for the visitors. And I did some spatial analysis at where people said they had camped. I did not do any at the space in Arizona because that was more of a day use site. So that's the data that I'm going to be referring to as we go through this. Now, these are the 3 things I want you to keep in mind as we go forward, that hikers don't know what the right thing is, so they need some help. They don't know why it's important, and that is kind of their attitude and what's a value and how we can address that. And then they also need to know how to do it. So that's very much going to be how Jake is going to present his information. I want to put in really a 4th one that's important. They want to do right. They just simply don't know these 3 topics. No one I asked if they would do the survey said, I don't care about that. So keep that in mind, that for the majority of the hikers and people visiting, they want your help to do what is the right thing. So we know a lot about overcrowding, and I want to set this kind of as a stage on how this research brought some new things to light. We know that primarily trash, our survey said, was the most important, and that's pretty consistent. Overcrowding is very big. And then we have wildlife harassment is the next thing up there. But when I asked them specifically about toilet paper versus overcrowding, you can see it became more of a concern. Now, this could be a little bit of a bias because it was my topic and I was asking directly about that. However, also there were numerous respondents that said, I don't ever see it, but if I did, I would not have selected less of a concern. I would have more of a concern. So this is a really important topic for not just the wilderness managers, but also the visitors that come to our areas. So we ask about their knowledge, and we wanted to know, did they see any signs specifically on toilet paper? This is kind of a referencing back to our poll there, where close to the same percentage of people are not actually saying, do something with your toilet paper. So over 3/4 of the people saw no signs on actually toilet paper. Want to note that the wilderness areas that we surveyed, the managers all say, pack out your toilet paper. So that is a specific mandate or regulation that were in these areas. And yet 3/4 of the people saw nothing about it. We asked them, can it biodegrade? And that was important to help understand why they need to pack it out. Most people said it depends on certain things, but only 4% said no, it is not. So that's useful when you're creating your messaging. We then ask, is it litter or human waste? Because those are the main ways that it has been grouped in the research, and also often in leave no trace literature and information. But really, a lot of people, I didn't ask them was it both, but that was something that they said, yes, it is. So we don't really know what it is because it's a very highly emotional type of litter. And this is important for types of partnerships that you might want to use, which is also what Jake is going to speak on. You can see here 30% said they learned it from Scouts. We asked their age demographics, and numerous people were in their 50s and 60s and said, I learned my outdoor ethic from Scouts. They also said they bury, or they bury or they burn their paper. So we need to figure out how we can get this information updated to the people that are visiting our areas. All right, so then we ask about attitudes. And somebody has already mentioned this. My dog gets into it. These next 3 will ring true with wilderness character. Doesn't feel like nature anymore. Solitude, important part, because when you see toilet paper, you see people. And it takes away from that experience that you are in wilderness anymore. Important part here is I won't pick it up. Numerous people said, I like to leave a place better than I find it. I'll pick up other types of litter and trash, but I ain't touching this one. Now, we wanted to know some of their barriers, because that is going to help us know how to help them do the right thing, right? Gross was a very popular word. Smells, sanitations were of concern for them. They want to know some real specifics. What do I do with it? Where does it go? How do I keep myself sanitary? And then just remembering about it. This last one was interesting to me. I had asked somebody, they had just returned from a multi-day hike in the wilderness, and they said, is this something I was supposed to be doing? So yes, it was on the regulations for that wilderness, but they didn't know that. Then we asked them, what would help you change and do this behavior in a way that has been asked? So interestingly, knowing biological impacts came to the top. That fits in line with a lot of other recreational ecology research that says if people know the biological impacts, how it affects wildlife, these type of things, they're more likely to comply with the request. However, we got a couple things here. So those just really reiterate what I just said. And some people said, I just don't want it in my car. So we can address that potentially. And I like this one, if I was told to. Like, well, we need to know how you can learn that you were requested, but you didn't actually were told. So that was the regulation, but they didn't get that part. Now, this is really intriguing. We ask what kind of impact that they felt when they saw the discarded used toilet paper. 97% talked about themselves, their dogs, how it affected them. They thought it was, inappropriate. They were mad at other hikers for not following the rules. We had 3% say, it bothers me how it's affecting the water quality or wildlife. So even though they say that will help them, their gut response to this topic is very personal. We asked them how prepared they were. And you can see here that we've done a pretty good job of getting people to pack out their trash, that they know to be able to take care of that. We've done, they are somewhat prepared in the day hike. The overnight and the multi-day, they have a lot more preparation for both these, defecation and urination. But when we asked them if they had something to pack out that paper that they brought in, we have a discrepancy here between the overnight hikers and also the multi-day hikers. You might look at the day one, and I'm not really sure what's going on there. So you have to take people's answers to your questions with a grain of salt sometimes. So then we asked them, what are their solutions? This we have as education way up here at the top. That's going to be interesting when Jake presents his information, because we do need to educate, but then we also have to address these barriers. And really, that is part of the education, and telling them how to do something and not just making sure they know what they're supposed to do. Now, this one is not intended for you to read. This is really just intended to impress you with how much people cared about this topic and what they offered. Alark and I are submitting this paper for an uncountable time. But we do have a pre-press that's available on ResearchGate, and at the end, we will have a link to that pre-press so that you can see more of this information and be able to address that on your own time. But the things that are really important here are they broke it down into language, how to talk about it. And one of the things that was really reiterated numerous times was we need to normalize this conversation. Like, we do this once a day, maybe you do it every couple of days, but it's still something we all do. And so how are we going to talk about it? It was entertaining to me when person said, we never say, oh no, I have some human waste on my shoe. So we need to talk about the human waste because that is the overall topic, but we also want people to relate to what we're telling them, and that will be more instructive on how to get them to comply. Content was a big thing. They have numerous ideas of how we can actually overcome this. A video on how to use a toilet kit that was reiterated several times. And then the placement and timing are really important, because if people get to the trailhead and they see a sign that says, please pack out your food scraps, most of them are going to say, okay, I can do that. I didn't bring something from orange peel, but now I know that it's going to impact the wildlife, so I'll put it in the side of my pack. We're not doing that with toilet paper on the fly, right? So we have to give them information about what to do ahead of time. And that's really important, to have it on your social media, to have it listed where somebody learns about the trail, then tell them this is what the process is for that trail. So they need to be simultaneously discussed. So placement and timing are really, really important. Now, just touching on the economic impacts, one paper that I read that was published in 2018, so these numbers are actually going to be higher, but at that point, wilderness contributed $700 million to the economy. This includes things like the Zoom towns now, where people have moved because public land is really easily accessible, and the specific organizations that take people out into the wilderness. And then those towns, if it's a wilderness-based town, you have the ice cream shop, the grocery store, the real estate. All those are based on having a healthy and clean wilderness area, not simply that there is a wilderness there. So I asked people, how much did you see? And you can see here, most of people said 0. We have a 0.4 average of how many incidences of toilet paper people saw on their hike that they just finished. Then I asked, what would be your tolerance level for not returning to a wilderness based on seeing toilet paper? There we have the majority of people said 2 to 3 incidences. If I saw more than that, I'm not coming back. And that's pretty low number, I felt. And then I did the spatial data analysis, and on average, I saw almost 5 incidences per campsite. There was one campsite that was had several reasons, like the other areas you couldn't dig a cat hole, you could have several tents at this one site, but the highest amount that I saw at one place was 28 incidences at that one site. So this is important to remember that they don't see it yet. And so we are ahead of the curve, but if we don't stay ahead of the curve, then it can have some wilderness character impacts. It can have visitor impacts, and it can have economic impacts. So with that, I'm gonna quickly go over our key takeaways. Let me look at that watch. Okay, we're doing pretty good. And we need to talk about it. Here are some specific things to talk about it and ways to talk about it. You may notice this little doggy has traveled with us the whole time, because one thing that we need to do is reiterate the same message and reiterate it in different ways and different mediums. So if we see this over and over again, then there's a chance that you will remember that little doggy from this talk. and that is an example of how we need to use our messaging. Then we need to give instructions and also give them the tools to do the right thing. So we talked about the videos. That's going to be helpful. Tell them specifically how to stay safe and sanitary with these topics, and then give them some specific items, the wag bags, and places to dispose. And whoops, let me get out of that. And also some alternatives. I want to say quickly, I thru hiked the Colorado Trail last summer. It's a 500-mile trail because I took a couple of jumps. I had no toilet paper. I had none. I used a wag bag. When I needed it, I made my own. I had Kula cloth, and I used Jake's products. So people were interested in how can you do this without even taking toilet paper in. And then, as I mentioned before, that last one that's really important, let me get my cell phone out of here, is where we can give advance notice is going to be really important. And then working with these different groups so that we can broaden our reach and also update people's information and keep it current. With that, I am going to turn it over to Jake.
Awesome. Thank you, Elli. That was great. So as I mentioned, my name is Jake, and I'm one of the co-founders of a company called PACT Outdoors. And you can check out our website and get more information at pactoutdoors.com. We're based in Colorado, where poop has become a pretty significant issue, really in recent years, but it's just been growing with the increased participation of outdoor recreation. We started this business about 4 years ago, and really the goal was to create products that make it both easier and sustainable for people to do their business in the outdoors. We looked at this, what was the current standard, and if you are comfortable packing out, yeah, you use something like a wag bag and you're probably pretty good at it, but we know a lot of the population is either unfamiliar or really unclear with that. If you're bearing, you use what we kind of call a home hack. You get a Ziploc bag, a half-used roll of TP, a trowel of some kind, and you kind of assemble these items together when you think you'll need them. But when we look at something like a home hack, people taking products and putting them together, it's an indication to us that there's an opportunity to make something that's a little bit better and easier to use. And so that was really the beginning. But then what kind of quickly followed was our background, or my partner's background, is in mycology, specifically mycoremediation. So using fungi to decontaminate soil. And so that's sort of the basis for our approach to burying your waste, is using fungi as an agent to support decomposition. So Elli, if you want to go to the next slide, I can kind of demo one of our products. So there's two main parts. If you look at that image on the right or my video screen, we use something called PACT tabs. These are little wooden plugs inoculated with mycelium spores. So what's mycelium? It's the root system for fungi. It branches out underground, decomposing things. And the species that we use in PACT tabs are non-aggressive and native throughout North America, but you add them to the cat hole and they break down your poop faster. But not only that, they also kill harmful pathogens like E. coli that can make their way into waterways or harm wildlife or things like that. So a little bit of a difference there from what's established in traditional practice. The second part of our kit are called PACT wipes. These are dehydrated and compressed. You add a squirt of water to these and they unfold into a thick, wet 9-inch towel. So they get you clean like a wet wipe, but what we really focused on in the design of this product was removing as many of the chemicals and additives that are traditionally found in toilet paper and conventional wet wipes as possible. So toilet paper has PFAS, or forever chemicals, in it, which is becoming an increasing problem in our waterways. So these are free of PFAS. These are FSC certified, so they come from responsibly managed forests. But most importantly, they're what's called Okotex 100 certified. So they're free of 1,000 of the most common chemicals found in textile products. So our goal with this was to really make a cleaner form of toilet tissue, but also put it in a form that really puts hikers and backpackers and outdoorsy people in mind, right? Toilet paper gets wet and it gets crushed and all these different things and it blows around. By putting it in this form, we think it's a bit more user-friendly. So we take these two items and we package them up in all-in-one bathroom kit. So this is our PACT Light kit. So there's a little bungee, but everything you use is stored in the handle of the trowel. So there's a 6-inch mark, so you know how deep to dig. The trowel is comfortable to hold and is ergonomic. We say if there's one thing we get people to do, it should be digging cat holes and burying their waste. That addresses the vast majority of use issues and non-compliance issues in the backcountry. And then your supplies are stored inside the shovel. So there's 15 wipes stored in this little Pez dispenser tray right here. And then your PACT wipes are stored in this other part right here. And so you have a week's worth of bathroom supplies, all kind of stored here in the handle of our shovel. And then we make various iterations on this kit for different types of needs. We are also this summer coming out with a more user-friendly wag bag as well. So that's kind of the overview. The last piece I'll say about our products is, and you can see on that picture on the left, is they all come with an info card. An info card that explains what all these things are, but then on the back, step-by-step process for how to use this while being Leave No Trace compliant. So just backtracking a little bit to why we started this company, I think most of the folks on this call probably really are intimately familiar with the downstream effects of mishandled waste. There's a couple things that are really cropping up for us here in Colorado. One of the biggest is reductions or restrictions in access. So poop is, every time we see this, poop is usually a top 3 to 5 reason of why land managers have to reduce access. So here in Colorado, in our gateway communities and high traffic areas, we're converting dispersed camping into pay, fee-based. We reduce the number of backcountry permits issued to a given area. In Rocky Mountain National Park, for example, we've instituted a timed entry system. We support land managers in these decisions. They certainly don't come to them lightly, but our stance is that mishandled human waste should never be a reason that we have to restrict access. What we need to be doing is supporting people to have the tools and the know-how that they need to follow proper practice. We're at this time right now in the outdoor industry where we're trying to support greater and greater levels of participation, especially among marginalized groups and folks who are not fortunate enough to grow up getting to do these types of things. And when we have to institute some of these policies, it poses a direct challenge to that larger goal. In addition here, this is obviously an outsized burden to land managers from a resource standpoint. Waste management is a huge part of Forest Service budgets, for example, dealing with facilities. And the last thing, which kind of brings us to some of the case studies that I'm about to present, and a really powerful lever for talking about this, at least for us, has been damaging the state's tourism product. So in Colorado, 82% of our overnight visitors are repeat visitors. They come year after year, and they maybe go on that fly fishing trip, or they do that family camping trip. And I think we can all understand, and Elli's research supported this, seeing mishandled human poop and toilet paper, it's kind of like walking into a dirty hotel room. It has a really big impact on the quality of your experience. And so that's been a kind of a powerful way to talk to organizations like the Colorado Tourism Office about how important it is to start getting ahead of this problem, knowing that having these encounters with mishandled waste at a campsite or on a trail is a big deterrent for whether you're likely to come back to our state or not. So with all this in mind, 2 years ago, we went to the Colorado Tourism Office and applied for a grant for a program called Do Colorado Right, and that's Do with 2 O's. The state, to their credit, was kind enough to let us riff on their Do Colorado Right tagline. And really the goal here was to get PACT kits like this one at key points of backcountry access in the wilderness to ensure that the folks who maybe need these the most, who are the most likely to be unprepared, whether they're visiting from in-state or out-of-state, have what they need before heading out on a multi-day backpacking trip or a camping trip or even just a day hike. And so if you go to the next slide, Elli, for me, we assembled this great roster of partners within the state. So Colorado Parks and Wildlife, district offices of the U.S. Forest Service, major trail organizations like Colorado Trail Foundation, the CDTC. We also had groups, local tourism organizations, so Chaffee Rec County, Northwest Colorado Outdoor Coalition, so tourism destination management organizations, and then other trail organizations, San Juan Mountain Association, Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. We're in year 2 of this program, and this list of partners that you see here has actually grown to 37 different partners. So what we're doing with these partners is PACT Outdoors handles the procurement and the design and the packaging and all that stuff of PACT products. And then we distribute them to partners in all these local areas to give them out at state-run visitor centers, local visitor centers, ranger district offices. Trail organizations give them out at volunteer events and volunteer days. We just finished giving them out at Outside Festival, which was held here last weekend in Denver, Colorado. So the key is give them to local organizations who know their areas intimately, who know the most affected locations and have a lot of these local programs like ambassador programs in place, and empower them to distribute the products and have the conversations with users because they know their areas best. And our company PACT kind of serves as the glue and the organizers for this whole program. You can go to the next slide, Elli. So we learned one thing, we learned a lot from this program, but there's one overarching takeaway from this. When we talk with folks who work at visitor centers or people who volunteer as forest ambassadors to talk to users, they tell you that poop is a really difficult topic to address with strangers. Regardless of how tactful you are, it can feel intrusive, it can feel preachy, it's tough. And we know education is critical. It's a fundamental tactic in this whole effort to sort of get people, following and complying with best practices. But the program taught us that tools are better. When you hand somebody a bathroom kit, it shifts an awkward conversation instantly to a positive. Suddenly they're excited and they're engaged and they want to know more. And it feels like they're empowered versus sort of being talked to. And so a lot of what we're thinking about with these programs and pilots that we're kind of developing here in Colorado is building a suite of tactics and tools that includes, but extends beyond simply education. So that's our Do Colorado Right program. And just to kind of cap that off, I'll say we're in the 2nd year of this. We're doing some really robust research around how programs and strategies like this impact the likelihood for users to prepare ahead of time with the necessary tools, but also get some baseline understanding of attitudes, behaviors, current practices. And so if you're interested in learning more, later this fall in September, we'll be releasing a lot of the data that we've collected from people who have encountered and engaged with this program. So we know burying your waste, especially in a mountainous area like Colorado, isn't the only tactic. It's not the only approach that people can need to learn and be comfortable with. Packing out your waste is the other one. And so this summer we kicked off a pilot program called the Clean 14. So Colorado has 54 14,000 foot peaks. They're a huge driver in terms of tourism and outdoor recreation. but they see enormous amounts of traffic in a very short period of time. So for example, our tallest peak, Mount Elbert, sees about 30,000 users in a span of 8 to 10 weeks. And what's more, as you can probably imagine, most of those hikes on 14ers take place in above tree line or in alpine environments that are really fragile and where packing out is an essential practice. So we're partnering with Leave No Trace on some research, as well as the Colorado 14ers Initiative this summer. They're the organization who is primarily responsible for trail work on 14,000 foot peaks in our state, to institute a physical infrastructure system. And Elli, you can kind of go to the next slide while I talk about the components of this. So one part of the program is to create physical wag bag infrastructure. So this would be a wag bag distribution kiosk like you see in the picture there. So I could grab a wag bag when I start hiking on my peak. But in addition to that, creating disposal stations along the trail where you can get rid of your wag bag after using it. We know that that's a big barrier to compliance and usage is like, I just finished using this. How do I get rid of it as quickly as possible? And so those disposal stations, and then we'll have researchers at the trailhead of Mount Elbert, in this case, doing surveys and research around attitudes and beliefs, barriers to wag bag use, but also kind of getting an understanding of how solutions and infrastructure like this, as well as other potential approaches, help to make it easier for people to comply with best practice. So this program is kind of marrying product in the form of the wag bags that we'll be distributing. It's marrying physical infrastructure. And this third piece, which I haven't really spoken on a whole lot, is what we're kind of calling social movement. I think one limitation in our minds of how we've sort of addressed this problem in the past is treating users as sort of passive recipients of information rather than building programs that sort of empower them in bigger ways and make them a part of the solution. This works really well with Colorado 14ers because there's so much pride with these peaks. Whether you've come out to Colorado and hiked your first one, or whether you've done all 54, it means a lot to you. It's like a major achievement in really anyone's life. And we believe that we need to be leveraging that pride that people have for these peaks to drive greater compliance and drive greater engagement with the program. So if we're lucky enough to continue this and grow it in coming years, one important component of this is leveraging the user communities to help stock wag bag stations to be evangelists of how to do this properly and just kind of help build awareness and excitement around the program. So that'll kind of be the third arm. And, you know, as I said with the last program, with this one, we'll be kind of crunching the data that comes out of it at the end of this year. And if that's something you'd be interested in, we'd love to hear from you and we'd love to share it.
Great.
All right, thank you, Jake. And we're got a few minutes now for your questions. I've seen some come up in the chat, but Kim, if you will share those questions with us, we'll see what we can do for answers.
I will. So starting off with Coulter Pence, is the study published? She would like to refer others to the information being shared.
All right, not yet. It is our goal. We're rewriting it. The last journal said rewrite it and resubmit. So we're in that process, but we do have on the next slide, and I believe Kim has those links she can share in the chat. We do have a research gate of the first paper up there, and we'll share that link so you can see the data that before it is peer reviewed.
Yes. Thanks for the gentle reminder to go copy and paste those links. And I'm going to put those in the chat. So second question, and this one was from me. The tabs themselves, have they been blessed or any science-based support by L&T or any other science? I mean, the mushroom part of that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Kim. So a couple pieces to this. So PACT, we've, in the development of this product, we've conducted our own internal research on this. We've made this publicly available, and we'll regularly share our own studies with partners or anyone who's curious about this. So happy to share all the details of the results. When we started working with Leave No Trace on this a number of years ago, as well as land managers, they say, you know, the standard rightfully is peer-reviewed academic research. And so we've been in that process for the last 18 months or so. So we're working with Colorado Mountain College, which has an ecosystem science and a big outdoor rec component at their university here in Colorado. And so later this year, we've been essentially replicating, or they've been replicating some of the research studies, but in a form that will be peer reviewed and ultimately published to meet some of those standards of both Leave No Trace and government organizations. So later on this year, we'll have some of those studies, but also happy in the interim to share the research that we've done internally. And a couple lines on the mycelium, like our species grows natively throughout the North America. It's approved for introduction in Hawaii and Alaska. And what's really important, and a big question that we get a lot, is what happens to it after its job is done, if you will. And so our studies in the field revealed that once its poop source or its source of food, in this case poop, is depleted, its life cycle ends. So this is not an aggressive form of mycelia. And it's, in addition, it's always going to kind of lose out, if you will, to endemic fungi in the soil. It's very picky as a wood rotting fungi in terms of where its food sources are. So it will always be outcompeted by fungi that are already there. But a great question, and happy to share everything we have documented on this so far.
I want to jump in and add to that. I saw one comment about the wipes themselves. Should they be buried? And in the PACT does a really good job of saying, don't bury this stuff in the high desert, and don't bury it in the alpine area. Those areas should be packed out. But what I love about the wipe itself is that it becomes the substrate for the fungus to really start going. And so it is specifically designed to be buried, whereas toilet paper is designed to go into a sewer system.
Yeah, that's right. You nailed it, Ellie. And it's also a really good question. If you're in an environment, as Ellie talked about in a lot of research, where they say, hey, you need to pack out your paper products, definitely pack this product out and follow those local regulations. But, as she kind of mentioned, it's like the paper source is wet, fibrous, plant-based. So it's this perfect initial food source for the fungi. So in our field studies, when the wipe was present, it actually helped the fungi to be even more effective, which we weren't even necessarily expecting at the outset.
Great. Okay, one last question, and I have to start an entirely different Zoom in just about 3 minutes. Did any of your trailheads have vault toilets in your study area?
We didn't have vault toilets at any of them. Well, no, that's not true. Some of them were vaults, some of them were porta potties. The one in Arizona had numerous porta potties, and the wilderness managers that I spoke to there said that had really helped the first part of the hike. This was also to a high peak, the highest peak in Arizona. So vault toilets help in the beginning, but then as people keep going, they didn't need to use those toilets when they first started, and that's where the discarded used toilet paper and human waste had become a real problem, because they were now struck with the need. Let's see, the one at Mount Elbert did not have, not Elbert, Eldon. They did not have one there, but they had a campground a little ways away. And then the two others that we had, there were trailheads. One of them was associated with a campground, and so there was a toilet there.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and we'll just poop on, y'all.
Yep. Email us with any questions that you have. That's in the chat. So thank you so very much, everybody, for attending.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.